subsection C for real estate discussion. Then at 9 a.m. we'll go into a closed session pursuant to RCW 42.30.140 section 4 for labor discussions. Then at 9:30 we'll have another executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101 subsection G, qualifications of an applicant for public employment. And then we'll be back here at 10 a.m. Are you ready?
I am. You're good to go.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We will start this off with a .09 stakeholders meeting. So the purpose of this meeting is to really discuss establishing a policy for how we're going to distribute .09 funds. It would be much better if everybody knew exactly how they were distributed and the timelines and those sorts of things. So that's the purpose of this meeting, and I will hand it off to you, Travis, since you wrote up a procedure.
Sure. So just a brief history so that everybody kind of knows how I came into this. When I came over into this position, there was some concern that there wasn't really a procedure for how to apply for the .09 funds. There was no timeline involved, anything like that. I received some feedback from at our monthly administrators breakfast that's ran by the EDC from a lot of the different stakeholders that they would like to see something put into place. I think I came back and talked to the commission. The commission agreed that that would probably be something that would be useful. I spent a bit of time going out to other counties and looking at the procedures that they had posted and how they do the process. Compiled what I felt like was probably the best practices from what I could tell from around the state, and then put this document together. Put it out to feedback from the commission, got some feedback there. Also sent it out to the EDC so that they could distribute it among some of the stakeholders out there so that they could provide feedback. I received a lot of feedback. Some of that feedback was somewhat contradictory with one another. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just from the perspective of the stakeholders. They had things that they would like to see or not see in there. It was not going to be productive for me to do a whole lot of changing the document, coming to the commission, going back to the stakeholders, going back and forth. So I felt it would be a little bit more productive to just simply have a meeting where the commission could ask any of the stakeholders who'd like to discuss what they'd like to see in there or the problems, and we could change it or not change it as the commission sees fit, because this is obviously a county document, county procedure, so it is up to the county commissioners. So that was kind of the history behind it, and kind of the spirit with which I would want to enter into this. I'm, as far as I'm concerned, sort of Switzerland on the document. I don't really have hard feelings about it one way or another. If they convince you that it's a good idea to make some changes in here, happy to do it. Just wanted to bring everybody together so that we could talk about it.
Well, typically on a briefing, we don't take comment from the general public, but we can bend those typical rules. And I think we can open it up for comments. If you can keep your comments to 3 minutes, and try and remember this is about the policy, not specific projects or programs that you're looking for, but how can we improve this process and make it work better for everyone. So with that, I'm going to kind of open it up to those who would like to make a comment.
Do you want them to come to the table? Or?
Yeah, I'd suggest you come to the table. That way you'll be closer to the microphone. So who wants to step it up? Well, it looks like we have our first volunteer here.
Well, I don't have to be up here alone. I mean, if anybody else is wanting to circle up too, I mean, I think. Very good. Don't worry.
You're not alone.
Here we are, a rose between two thorns. So just to kind of put a finer point maybe on
Well,
Another
I wanted to
rose.
be polite
Another
and leave the
rose.
chair open for anybody else.
He's the stem.
So to kind of put a finer point, on what Travis said, this is something that at the EDC we've been talking about since Mark was in Travis's position, and really we're a beneficiary of the 09 fund. I mean, that's the contracted work that we do with the county, but there had not really been a rhyme or reason to when that process would get started and what would trigger that, and there would be kind of a letter that was sent out that would say, hey, we have, EDC funding, applied for to 09. That would get sent out to all the eligible agencies, but it wasn't clear to them that there was also an opportunity for them to apply for 09 funding at that same time. And so Jen and Mark started to work on this, probably about a year or so ago. And so it's just kind of an opportunity for us to work with you all about, what a process would look like that was a little bit more clear and transparent for eligible entities. I will say, there hadn't really been a need to do this, I think in large part because we did have American Rescue Plan funding that was going out to a lot of these organizations, and I think that was a really successful process and endeavor for the county. It was a great way to partner with these organizations to get critical infrastructure projects completed, and so they've been really good stewards of that money and have been able to deliver really good projects for the community. As we start to think about that money tapering off and what the future looks like. I've read a lot in the paper about some of the concerns that the county has with their finances and the budget picture and everything. This is an opportunity to use funding that is very, very specific for specific things to lean into economic development in the county, which if we're successful in that mission collectively, that should help your revenue situation out as well. And so if we're strategic in that, I think we can help turn the tide a little bit on some of the pressures that the general fund is feeling.
One request, state your name, who you're with.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I know who you are and who you're with, but.
Yeah, Kevin Schutte, Economic Development Council, yeah, so we want to be able to help facilitate this. Obviously, one of our deliverables for the county and our contract with you is soliciting projects for the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy project list. We solicit those projects, compile them, and turn those over to you, so you have at least an idea of what projects might be eligible for 09 funding and what would make sense, and so we want to be able to support this process, and not just the county, but all of our partners who are out there trying to do good work for their parts of the community as well.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. Justin Holsgrove, Mason PUD3. We think that the form that Travis put together is strong, a good framework there. There are a couple of things that PUD3 has to provide feedback on specifically. The first is, in the proposal, a standard project is $0 to $250,000, and we feel like with projects that are actually working to move the needle for economic development, those projects cost much more than that. If we're actually looking to make a difference on infrastructure and bringing and retaining businesses. And so PUD3 thinks that a standard project should probably start at $250,000 as opposed to the other way around. There also seems to be a specific issue of, if it's a multi-year project, there's some additional steps to take for approvals and whatnot. And these projects are all going to be multi-year projects if they're actually moving the needle for economic development. So while that multi-year process seems okay, let's just make it part of the standard because the project should be larger to start with. The second item would be that we would think that the Board of County Commissioners should be the authorizing entity rather than the scoring entity. And instead of having you guys be the scores, our recommendation would be to have what RCW sort of implies or at least hints at, that the county would consult with cities, towns, port districts, and the ADO to be the scoring criteria that scoring committee would bring to you folks as the Board of County Commissioners, and then you would authorize as opposed to be the scorers. That's our second bit of feedback. And then the third has to do with the idea of geographic equity. The document says that we're going to be based on scores, and then the Board of County Commissioners can do a geographic equity review. PUD3 feels that the funding should all be centered within urban growth areas, very specifically as it relates to economic development. Let's tie that funding to the urban growth areas throughout the county. Specifically, Shelton UGA has multiple parties involved and is a major driver within the county. We also understand that you represent different areas, and there certainly will be different parties that come to the table. And so if you wanted to look at a geographic equity, maybe a mechanism could be put in place that would look something like this, just a proposal. Year 1, taking applications for Shelton UGA. Cycle number 2, year number 2, taking applications for Belfair UGA. Cycle 3, another UGA. And then once they make it through, then cycle back to year 1 as well. So that allows for some structure behind the geographic equity piece as opposed to maybe something that's a little more subjective. So those are our 3 pieces of feedback for consideration. Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
Kristen Masteller with Mason County PUD number 1. Big thanks to Travis for getting this, herding the cats and getting this process put together. I know it's not easy. And just thanking the commission for finally putting together a process for this. So Mason PUD 1 brings home to Mason County a lot of federal dollars, not just state dollars through capital budget requests, but also federal appropriations and federal grants, and they all require some sort of local match. And as a small entity, the local match is difficult to swing, even because, as Justin said, there's multi-million-dollar projects. So a 5% match on a $3 to $5 million project is significant for a utility that has 9,000 meters total. We would respectfully disagree with Justin's position about the geographic equity. Not all of our agencies are located in UGAs. And just because we're not in a UGA doesn't mean that the infrastructure developments that we're doing are not important and don't move the needle in economic development, specifically when it comes to housing. Workforce housing inventory, the county did a housing needs assessment, what the figures are in the gap analysis there. So the way to provide that is to get the water infrastructure together for water adequacy forms that are coming through the building permit process, and then also having electrical capacity for future development. Not all that occurs in the UGA. So I would hope that you would keep that geographic diversity intact the way it is, so that way you can have the flexibility to choose projects that you think are worthy of the funding and meet the criteria under the .09 guidance. And then as far as the size of the awards, I agree. Our projects are not small. You might have smaller things, like I know you funded a dock project that was about 35. That's great. That's a great project for that agency. But for many of our agencies, the projects that we're needing matching funds on, these are $5 to $10 million projects. So if you want to actually move the needle on economic development in a way that supports the comprehensive plan, and the economic component of the comprehensive plan is that you've got to invest those dollars in the region in projects that are going to build that capacity. And a lot of that's utilities, and utility infrastructure is expensive. So I would hope that the projects would be awarded, up to $500,000, and then have that flexibility. I think you wrote that in there, where if they're bigger than that, we can come pitch that and explain why it's important. So I'd like to see that remain intact as well. But thank you for doing this process.
Yeah, actually, I wrote in there that, I would think it would be appropriate for anybody wanting to access the .09 funds to have the opportunity to come in and present to the commission.
Yeah.
So that they can sell their project and explain
Yeah.
the benefits better than probably you and I can
Right.
when it's explained to me, so that's why. Yeah,
Thank you.
So, can I ask a question real quick? So, so we do have small projects, so how would, and you can answer this, how would you say, the presentations, you're saying the presentations should come before the BOCC, but if the BOCC is only being the authorizer, not the scoring, then the scoring should, or those presentations should go before whoever that scoring committee is, correct?
That was Justin's idea.
PUD
Probably
3's
correct.
feedback was that there would be a scoring committee, and yes, I think that in that framework, it would be appropriate for them to present to the scoring committee.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, I'm gonna wait until they're done. I've got a lot of comments on it.
Good morning, Mark Ziegler, City Manager, City of Shelton. I don't, for the sake of brevity, I don't want to regurgitate what my colleagues up here have stated, other than the importance of putting these dollars to work in our communities on behalf of the City of Shelton, and the need for public infrastructure to be extended within our UGA as we get those comments, questions on a regular basis about how we can continue to extend these to points, much like Sanderson Field, now it's Spring Road that we're talking about, our most latest application, to bring workforce housing, commercial development into our communities and leverage the funds that are already available to us. We purposely did not request any funds from our legislators this year for this project, for the Spring Road Sewer Extension, just because of some of the uncertainty with where other funds were going to come from. With nearly $1 million of federal funds that luckily enough the Port of Shelton was able to obtain last year from Derek Kilmer's office. Those have been now transferred over to the city. Since it's a city project, we're intent on moving forward with that project to help bring some stability to some of those neighborhoods that are out there in the Blevins Road area that we're familiar with, but also bring that economic development opportunity by having that public infrastructure closer to Sanderson Field and to the doorstep of a potential 80-plus unit multifamily housing project that the county approved, I believe in 2024, right, through the planned unit development process. So those are just, I guess some of the examples of the opportunities that we saw in our project proposal with that sewer line extension. And as I said, we're going to continue moving forward with that. As we saw in that short session, we just didn't believe that there was the capital funds available, but we hope to leverage existing federal money, some local money out of the city of Shelton, and then potentially a couple other pots of money to get that project done and continue that infrastructure improvement within the Shelton UGA. So appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So just to sharpen this pencil a little bit, is there any comments about the policy that you want to make?
Again, I'm just regurgitating kind of what I heard. Specifically the funding amount, I agree. These are, this is a $2 million additional funding request for this sewer line extension. There's about $1 million, like I said, of design and could move into construction money on top of that. But the $250,000 mark is a pretty low threshold. I appreciate everybody sitting up here and the others that'll be applying for these funds, but but I can speak for the city of Shelton and the needs here, that any ranking or scoring based on that proximity demographic within the UGA is certainly something that we would like to consider as well.
Okay, Wayne, did you want to?
Somebody else want to speak first?
Anybody else in the room want to comment or come up and have any comments? Seeing none? Commissioner Neville?
Okay, yeah, I have some comments on this and some issues. I've been around a long time, and there's certain things I know that I've never liked when it came to the 09 funds and stuff. I want to point out a couple pieces. We have money right now because of ARPA. We didn't expend monies, so we got used to something on a large scale where big dollars went out. We don't have that kind of money in ARPA to feed on a regular basis. It just doesn't exist. That pool is a lot smaller. Right now, there is money there, and we need to look at how to do things with it. I'm not a fan of prioritization. The reason why is the big eats the small. I was on the EDC for many years, and that was one of the biggest problems that we tried to make sure is these little ports and stuff got fed as well as anybody else did. That was even before I was a commissioner. So whenever you have that prioritization, the big eats the small. If you go out and have this board or whatever put together, the big will eat the small. And that's why I don't support that. That's our job, is to weigh those things out. Also, it's our job to know there's other projects you may not know about, we have to know about, and we have to prioritize which ones are important. Personally, I always see 09 funds as an opportunity to make sure that a project I'm not speaking for your project, but you gave a great example. There are times where there's $1 million or $5 million out there, and it's not there if you don't have $1 million or $500,000 to get it. It just won't happen. That's where we need to prioritize and pay attention to that, realizing that you may be able to get monies other places. This is one time they may not be able to, and with that, that's how we need to prioritize that, personally, how I look at it. I also wanted to point out that even though we have great intentions, we're doing it, if we start farming out everything, then we will also become stupider. It's our job to learn every aspect of every little piece of it that we can. And the more we farm out to somebody else, the less information that we'll have to be able to benefit anybody. So I understand where you're coming from. I just want to tell you that's one of the issues I have with it. When it comes to the amounts, I'd like to see a couple of different little things. I believe there's some tiny eaters out there that it's very important, they need money when they can, and you're not one of the tiny ones. I'm thinking other ones where 50,000, be able to come in for up to 50,000 twice a year because their timelines are a little different. To be able to get that as long as they're on the SEDS list. As a rule, if they're not on the SEDS list, they never got vetted. We don't have time to vet everything. That has to be vetted somewhere else beforehand. And with that though, we also have to have flexibility. Your projects over the past, we have multi-million-dollar projects where we're paid 180,000, 100,000 a year for long-term years. We do that because we only have a certain amount of money in the 09 funds to be able to expend. So by putting them out there for 10, 20 years, like we're currently still paying 100,000 on a sewer system. We may have opportunities that come up where that's needed again. It might be for power expansion. But for us, we need the flexibility to look at it and decide that we want to do it over a 5-year period or a 10-year period. So that might be for more money. So I'm not sure that I'm just locked into a $1 million cap because sometimes it doesn't happen. We have to be able to be flexible with that, but we have to know our other monies and put it out there. I love what he's put together. I think it's so nice to actually have a framework. I think it was Kevin that was saying it a year ago, that it would sure help if we had one. We've never had one in all the years I've been here. I love having the idea of a framework. As I said, I think he's done excellent with every part of it. The only thing that I could really see us doing that much differently would be the idea of maybe combine them, having a smaller amount for the small reports twice a year. But that the regular package could be up to maybe, up to $1 million or whatever. But understanding we do that, we're done for a long time because we just don't have it. We also have to keep monies available for projects that we see for the county for an expansion or whatever as well. So you gotta remember, we're also an eater too. I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth of the matter. We have to consider all that. So with that, I have no problem with being a little flexible on the amounts. I would like to see, bi-yearly for smaller, but I don't have to. And other than that, I thank you for doing all the work that you did to put it together.
Do you mind if I just jump in
I'm
real
not the
quick?
chair.
So, I think, do you mind? Thanks. So I think, the other part of that is kind of sort of maybe at the heart of this, or the spirit of it at least, is to encourage there to be more collaboration between all of the infrastructure providers in the community. And so I think maybe to Commissioner Rowen's point, understanding what projects are happening where is really important, and what that ultimately means to the community kind of broadly is really important. I think it would also, and I'm not sure if this is in the draft policy or not, but ultimately you all would have an opportunity at the outset of an application period to say, this is how much money is available for this funding round. I think that's totally appropriate and within your purview to say, this year we're gonna grant out $500,000, and we're gonna evaluate projects, and we're gonna fund to that amount. That's, I think, within your responsibility as well to sort of manage that fund and be good stewards of it and make sure that there is, that sustainability aspect to it. And so, and I also think, looking at some of the, I think it's probably the port jurisdictions that are really small and sometimes really struggling to figure out where they're gonna get money to do projects. I think about the Port of Grapeview with how critical their dock and boat ramp are to, commercial shellfishing in that area, as well as Port of Hoodsport with their dock issues and what they would like to accomplish from a tourism and recreation perspective there. Even your own boat launch, on Hood Canal and Union is I think the last remaining free boat launch in Mason County on the canal. And so looking at what that means from a tourism revenue generation perspective, as well as commercial shellfishing. So I think you have an opportunity to kind of do both and here. You can kind of set limits and appropriate sideboards on what money is available year in and year out based on what your own budget forecasting is. And I think you also have an opportunity to address some of those, smaller organizations, maybe particular ports that have limited resources and don't have the same ability to go after financing or, any kind of internal, appropriating ability as well, so.
Commissioner. I agree with what you're saying. There will still have to be some type of, maybe a separation where we have something smaller can apply for this and something larger can apply for that. We'd have to be careful, because even if we guaranteed 500 a year, we'd be running out of money really quick, because we don't get a lot that's coming in with everything if we're guaranteeing it, because we're still gonna have a project that comes in that we think is valid, that could mean, 500 jobs for having power in a certain area, and I recognize that. So, but maybe it would be a good thing to also, by doing what you're saying, to teach them, by having a process that's, we'll say 250,000 every year we're gonna put out, it teaches them how to do it at least. And it starts that process. And if we had a smaller amount for the smaller groups, that teaches them as well, because you and I both know, we don't have a process, they don't know how to use it. Quite often, it doesn't get used because they don't know how to use it. And that's why everybody's asking for money now. During ARPA, we kind of taught you how to use it, now it's out there a little bit. And now we have an ex-commissioner that knows how, so he's telling you too, and that's not a bad thing, I'm just saying, that's part of it. So now we have an awareness of it. It wouldn't be a bad idea to start to train people.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to put in the policy a set amount. That'd be something that we have to decide what that amount
Yes.
is.
But that could be in the policy, that each year,
Yeah.
the commission will decide an amount.
It
Under
is, it's in
section-
the very first paragraph, it basically
Or-
says you can, to
Right, well-
paraphrase, you can put out a
It is-
lot, a little, or nothing, it's up to you.
In section 3, under funding amounts and project costs, under funding thresholds, you could just put to be determined by BOCC and leave out the up tos or up the maximum. Just leave those out
The bullet points?
completely, yeah.
I have a question, just to understand scale, can you give us a little bit of information on what the annual generation is to the county for the .09 funds and what the current fund balance is? I think that might help the conversation of scale.
Defer
Jen,
that to
can I-
Jen.
Yeah, so we started the year with over $4 million, so $4,154,488. And the projected 2026 revenue, this includes interest on that, is $1,260,000, so about 1.2 million aside from the interest.
Per year.
And we were able to amass some because of giving out monies out of ARPAs and stuff like that. It kept us from being forced to spend it. So that's why we have some money put away.
Thanks, Jen.
And then just, what have you appropriated for this year? What's
So the
of that
total,
1.2 or whatever?
the total appropriation is just under 740,000, and that includes our internal allocation amount, which is 9,000, so about 730,000 in total. That includes EDC 150,000, the last City of Shelton sewer payment that we have, which is just under 106,000. The Port of Greatview 25,000, Belfair Sewer 450,000, which I'm not sure if that is going to be transferred or not. We didn't transfer it in 2025. And then that's all.
So as you can see, that leaves several hundred thousand, but we also have the amount that we have set up too. That's been backlogged up in there. But you can see why we get nervous. We start looking at, 5 million here, so we can't. It's just not enough in that fund.
If you will, Commissioner. We have to consider the planning aspect from all these agencies. These aren't short-term projects, and they take a lot of planning and pre-development at the same time. So any decision point, right, closer to implementation or funding could really hinge the project moving forward. So we need the ability to plan upfront as well as much as we can. So if there is, so as much information as we can receive, I guess, on the project, on the process and the funds that are available, just allows us to plan forward as well.
Yeah, well, that's the purpose
You
of
got
this, is to try and make that easier and more readily available to everyone, so that we can Commissioner Trask, do you have any comments?
Yeah, oh, man, I'm really glad that you guys came in, so I wanna thank everybody in the room for coming in, and also for sending, we got yours, and another one from,
I think the other one I included was Justin, so I included your feedback in there
Okay.
so that they could consider
Oh,
that
thank
before
you.
the
Yeah.
meetings.
Thank you.
yeah, and I appreciate all those. There are some tweaks that we could make that might make it easier. I would definitely like to take out the bullet points under 3. Under the funding thresholds. But I also want to add in that I like that the BOCC, whoever's comes in 296 days, that the BOCC be the authorizing entity. I do like that a lot, not the scoring entity. I think that should be people outside of our organization, but the BOCC be involved in how it was scored or why it was scored.
You could do a process similar to curbs, where the staff or whomever kind of vets the project
Yeah.
to make sure, but the project has to come get pitched to the curb board to get approval. You could make it where the project had to get pitched to the BOCC before it got final
Right, we
approval.
do that with the Public Works Board too.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
all
And it
step
works.
in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I don't have a problem with an outside scoring agency, but ultimately, it falls to us to make those decisions. The fact that it's being scored this way is an advisory type function.
Mm-hmm.
And, as Commissioner Nettleton pointed out, there may be things that we're aware of that we're going to say, yeah, but we're gonna move this one up anyway, because of something that we know that is going to be, gonna have a bigger impact, even though it's a smaller. So we have to reserve that right, but I have no problem with the scoring agency, doing a lot of the legwork and digging into stuff like that.
And I'll throw out there, I was trying to preserve a balance between the board being educated and, having all the information to make a decision, but still having some criteria by which those were made. And the reason why I left it up to the board was because if in the other part of the policy, they're coming to present to the board to pitch their project, because ultimately you make the decision, you could end up having the board do a whole bunch of work that you're not really going to follow or
Don't have time.
you don't have enough time to consider anyway. So I was trying to find the balance in there, and I knew that the general preference was for this commission to have more information rather than less, and I felt like a separate board doing that scoring would ultimately result in you having far less information than you would otherwise.
And I don't mind an advisory role, but I really would disagree with the idea that we just be the ones that issue the money. We need to be a part of each aspect of that. I'm not a fan of some of the things that we do throughout the county where it goes through these advisory boards. It doesn't, eventually it becomes a little click there and stuff too that I don't like. Us being the ones that are responsible for the decision, it has to lay on our shoulders, because that's a lot of money that could disappear for future expenditure. It'd be great to be able to help a huge project today, but if she came in next year with the opportunity for $4 million, but we have to give $1 million of it and we don't have it, that's not good. So we have to keep our, we're limited on funds. Can you do something so we can bond out and give us a payment for the next 10 years? That's what they've done in the past, and that's successful, because then we can make it into something bigger. And I want to remind all of us, I'm sure you already know that, but everybody pays into this, and so we want to make sure everybody gets some things. But there are two major players in that, and that is the county and the city. And we have to always be aware that those city projects are specifically supposed to be in our back pockets for considering major investments. Just my opinion, it's probably good for what you're thinking, but at the same time, it's just, I'm trying to be honest with myself as well. Those are the ones that are providers of it.
The payment program is kind of what we're under with our main plan is great. Obviously, we really appreciate that. Ultimately, it took us, required us to go out and get loans, and we have to bond that, and there's
Yes.
debt services associated with that,
Yes.
right? So, That is a specific conversation outside of the .09 funding, whether the council has the capacity and the will to go